So the ECA is one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations. It was established back in 1958. Its mandate is very clear, to deepen the regional cooperation and the socio-economic development of the continent. And it normally does this through 3 pillars as a think tank. It also has convening power, whereby it brings together the member states and experts from these countries to present the findings, options coming out of its think tank work. And then we also undertake advisory services, which is basically our operational pillar on the ground. On the regional integration pillar, regional integration and trade pillar, it has been one of the long-standing objectives of Africa from the time the African Union was formed in its formative stage as formative years of the Organization of African Unity, to deepen regional integration in the continent. And so regional integration is seen not just in terms of market integration, but also creating connectivity through infrastructure development, by also ensuring that the benefits of regional integration are shared both by the citizens of the continent, even as those people who invest in the continent make profits out of this effort. So what the ECA does, it's basically to drive the policy initiatives that member states need to agree around, so that at least you can advance the regional integration. So we look at regional integration in a broad way. So the trade pillar is just one of them, and this is where the AFCFTA comes. The development of corridors, transport corridors, is the other area. Efficiencies in the logistics services that lead to the connectivity within the continent is the other area. But then all this is done with the objective of creating a competitive Africa that is able to integrate with the rest of the world, because we are part of the global community and there is a multilateral trading system where Africa is supposed to be part and parcel. I think what COVID-19 has done is basically to demonstrate to Africa and also to the rest of the world how important it is to have diversified economies, and also how important it is to have value chains that are resilient. So when it comes to the intra-African trade, we know that intra-African trade is actually quite low. It's about 17%. But it's a story of a glass half full, because when the conversation started about the AFCFTA, intra-African trade then was about the 10%. Now, the good thing about this intra-African trade, as we know it, is that if you look at what Africa is trading among itself and what is trading with the rest of the world, there is more of value-added trade that takes place among African countries than between Africa and the rest of the world. So if I was to paint a picture of what the situation of intra-African trade and where we want to go from here, first of all, we have a good base. Now, this good base can then, of course, be successful if we are able to diversify our economies much, much more. And then also if we have every African benefiting from this intra-African trade. And again, we want to see women benefiting from intra-African trade. We want to see SMEs benefiting from intra-African trade. We want to see young people benefiting from intra-African trade. We want to see small economies. We want to see LDCs benefiting from intra-African trade. And that is why our research is guided towards answering the questions, what do you need to do to make sure that you have this kind of trade, because it's only when you have an inclusive trade that you can have a sustainable trade. Now, why is it? It's I don't want to say that it is the only path. At the moment, it's probably to say that it's one of the pathways that at least Africa has control on towards moving forward. And I think Africa does not have the kind of fiscal space that we have seen developed countries having to be able to finance their development. So what we need to do in Africa is at least to leverage the opportunities that we have, and intra-African trade is one of those opportunities that at least we have to be able to help us not only create jobs and sustainable ones, but also be able to use intra-African trade to mobilize domestic resources that are essential for the financing of our development. And lastly, the last point I would also want to add to this is that as regional value chains emerge moving forward, we are at least able to focus on those regional value chains that are resilient, not in a situation like we found ourselves when the pandemic started, when the breakdown in the value chains meant that Africa was exposed because we did not actually have foundational, strong, resilient value chains that one could say are sustainable. African Continental Free Trade Area is a journey. And it's important to understand the AFCFTA as one of the first 10 flagship projects of the Agenda 2063. So we have the first 10-year implementation plan of Agenda 2063, and key among those is actually the African Continental Free Trade Area. So I like saying that it is true for the citizens. They would want to judge the performance of their leadership by being able to say that, yes, you have agreed on an agreement, you have signed to an agreement, you have ratified an agreement, you tell us there is start of trading, how much shipments have happened between Accra and Addis Ababa, how much investments have happened in Rwanda from other African countries because of the AFCFTA. Obviously, citizens and those who watch on African development, they want those answers today, or if not today, tomorrow. But we all know that deepening development, deepening trade, so that it delivers on the things that I have outlined is actually a journey. So you need to have a staying power. And the way you have a staying power is to do the things that you need to do. What are some of the things that you need to do? The first thing you need to do is that if you have ratified the AFCFTA, do you have an implementation strategy for that AFCFTA? And if you have an implementation strategy, is it an implementation strategy that captures the whole of government within your country to advance it? And if it captures the whole of government, is the Minister for Finance allocating resources towards that? Now, once you do that, in the medium term, I believe results are going to start to be seen. And so to answer concretely your question, I think it is from the medium to long term that we are likely to be able to say, yes, intra-African trade is not only growing as a share of total Africa's trade, but also to be able to see intra-African investments are increasing, and also diversification of the intra-African trade, and also the different parts of the society being able to say, yes, as a woman, I have my small business and I'm able to move things from Nairobi to Lagos without any issues because I'm benefiting from the intra-African trade. Now, so let me go back to the Agenda 2063. So one of the other things that happened in Kigali in 2018, when the heads of state agreed on the AFCFTA, was that there is the protocol on the free movement of people across the continent, which is a separate protocol which was being signed in Kigali. Now, so you cannot have an optimal AFCFTA if people are not able to move across the continent, because you do not want a situation whereby the cost of doing business is raised both in terms of time and in terms of the fees that you have to pay for you to be able to move across the continent, and also in terms of registration, this right of establishment, registrations of businesses, because you are not allowed to be in that market. So I don't think we are doing very well here in terms of the free movement of persons, or rather the free movement of people within the continent. I think we can do better, especially now that we have agreed on the AFCFTA, because the business people need, at least at the outset, and when I talk of business people, we should not just focus on the big businesses. We should also think of the business people who are one-person SMEs or five-person SMEs, as long as they're registered as establishments, business establishments, they should be able to move freely across the continent. So we do not have a protocol on the free movement of business persons within the AFCFTA, so to speak. But we do have a protocol on the free movement of persons under the African Union. We need to understand as a continent, why is it that protocol is not being ratified, yet it is so critical for us to optimize on the AFCFTA, especially for the movement of our business persons, or even for me as a consumer. We have opened up our services sector. So facilitate my movement for me to go and consume services in another African country. So there is more that we need to do there. First of all, there is a lot of intra-African investments actually that are taking place. Just like the area of goods, whereby the quality of trade in merchandise in Africa is of higher quality because it's value added than our trade with the rest of the world. You already see, even without the AFCFTA, there is a lot of intra-African investments taking place in the area of, especially in the area of financial services. Now we have started seeing similar things in terms of logistics. Logistics has always been there. We have also started seeing that in communication, just what you saw happening between this consortium led by Safaricom into Ethiopia, and then of course you have MTN all over the continent. So intra-African investments are taking place. So what is it? What other things that the governments need to do in other than what I said in terms of the AFCFTA? I think investment protocol. I think the investment protocol for me is one of those urgent things, because with that you will, with a stroke of a pen, address this idea of bilateral investment treaties between African countries, which create a sort of an environment of a race to the bottom, of an uneven playing field when it comes to attracting investments. And then, of course, governments would need to do what governments are supposed to do. An investor will not come to you if you do not have strong human capital. So governments need to invest in education, they need to invest in health, and they need to continue investing in infrastructure, especially in the area of energy, because nobody wants to come and invest in a country where you'll be having a lot of outages and you're not able to keep your workers working. Now, let me first of all begin by, again, going back to the economic history. And I want to give an example of small economies like an economy like Ireland, several decades back. I want to look at the economies of in Europe, Southern Europe. When these economies are integrated in the European Union, they were able to grow very rapidly because they were able to access a bigger market. Now, so the first point I want to make is that there is evidence to show that small economies benefit from bigger markets. And so the AFCFTA is actually, rather than being seen as a challenge or as an obstacle to the development of small economies, it actually offers a pathway for rapid convergence with the bigger economies. So that's the first point I would like to make, because there is empirical evidence to show that. The second point I would want to say is that the innovation of the AFCFTA is that there is something for everyone. So you may not have a deep, broad manufacturing base, but you have human capital that is able to provide a service. And the beauty of it is that as we move to the digital, as the digitalization has deepened, this digitalization has actually provided better opportunities for the smaller economies that have endowments of good services to be able to sell their products to the rest of the world. So in my view, the AFCFTA basically, or broadening of market integration over small economies, a pathway for rapid income convergence and deeper integration, but also opportunities to diversify their services market, even as they build their manufacturing capacity. So the simple answer of what are rules of origin is, it's basically a rule that is applied by the custom official to determine whether what is coming into the country through the customs border or at a border, whether that good has been produced within a country that is a member of the AFCFTA for this matter. Now, why that is important is because the free trade area sort of creates what we call a national treatment area. Anything that comes into Congo is treated the same way when it goes to the DRC or when it goes to Guinea. So to avoid a situation whereby something that is not made in Congo being taken to DRC or to Guinea when it does not meet the rule of origin, that's why you need the rule of origin. So why is it that they are a make or break? Actually, there are two ways to look at this. The first way to look at the rule of origin, it's supposed to prevent transshipment, because transshipment basically would kill the objectives of the AFCFTA or a market integration through an FTA in the first place. The second thing is, which is now the part, one of the question which you asked, which is a very interesting question, because there's a lot of contention on how to approach the way you structure the rules of origin. Are you going to use value added situation whereby you say, if a good meets 35% value addition, it is made in that particular country? Or are you going to use what we call the product specific? You look at the way it is produced. So now, if you want to create resilient value chains, you have to have a balance between value-added rules of origin and product-specific rules of origin, whereby under the product-specific rules of origin, you are looking at the intermediate inputs and the way they are produced as they enter into that value chain. So it's make or break in terms of preventing transshipment, but it's also make or break in terms of ensuring whether does it do the regional value chains that emerge out of the AFCFTA, are these regional value chains that make it possible for raw materials, intermediate inputs to be made and traded and transformed within the AFCFTA. If that does not happen, people will start asking questions. Then why did we go into this? So rules of origin are very important, first in protecting the integrity of the FTA, but two, in deepening the regional value chains that are so critical for resilience and job creation. We have written somewhere that COVID-19 pandemic enabled Africa to jump 7 years or rather African businesses and African governments to do what they are doing today, something that would have taken them 7 years to do, because they had to figure out how do we sustain our trade, how do we sustain our business in the light of the lockdowns that were happening. So essentially what the pandemic has shown is the importance of digital trade. But having said that, over the same period when we've been experiencing this pandemic, now the cost of the digital, what do I call it? The cost of the internet, or it has actually not fallen the way one would have expected. So it remains that because of the low investment in the digital infrastructure, or rather the infrastructure that you need for you to deliver on digital trade or digital delivery of services, the speeds have fallen, and with lower speeds, it also means that you're not able to be as efficient as you can. So the way to look at it is that it has been exposed to us that we can do better with the digital. We've been able to do things that would have taken us more time to do it. But then our weak infrastructure has also been exposed. So the first thing that we need to do as a continent is actually to invest more in the digital infrastructure. Having done that, since our objective is to deepen digital trade and the digital economy, not just within the country, but also across the continent, we need to have a regulatory regime that makes that possible. We want a situation whereby if you are a business that is registered in Namibia and you want to trade with a business that is registered in Algeria, it is possible for you to have the kind of identity, you are identifiable. So we have to deal with issues of, have regulations that underpins digital identity of individuals and of businesses. We need to have payment systems that are also interoperable, because you cannot have a digital system, digital trade, when your clearing house always has to go to New York or to London for you to execute your businesses. So we need to have our central banks, our ministers of finance coming up with regulations, our ICT ministers harmonizing their policies, so that at least we provide the policy regime besides the infrastructure that will make it possible for there to be trust in terms of the digital trade, but also the settlement of payments. We also have to do something about our logistics, our warehousing, and all these are going to be critical for the success of digital trade. But all those are investment opportunities that are being presented by the move towards digital. Is that we do actually see results. We have seen many African companies, African-born companies that are becoming champions nationally and across borders. And what makes it difficult for them to fly is because of the weak borders that exist within the continent, the multiple policy regimes, be it in terms of regulation or even in terms of the requirements for the people working in those fields across the continent. So the fact that we are having a move towards creating one common investment area, one common trade area, I think this, for me, is the most promising. And then when I look at how Africa has dealt with this pandemic, especially in terms of keeping economies open, working together in solidarity with each other, it reaffirms my faith that this initiative, for instance, the initiatives that we have in regional integration, they're not just platitudes. It's basically something that we can do because we have been able to fight the pandemic, for instance, in terms of procuring the supplies that you need, using the principles of what the AFCFTA is about, procuring in a pooled manner together, having prices that are sort of like factor market price equalization, if you understand. So if you're buying a vaccine in South Africa, is the same price in Morocco because you're doing it together. So I see the pandemic demonstrating to us that our efforts to create a common market is valid. It's a valid dream, and it keeps me moving and motivated. Oh, the first message is let's hasten the conclusion of the negotiations of the phase 2 of the AFCFTA. That's first and foremost. And as we do that, let's also make the necessary changes at the national level in terms of legislation to make this happen. Second, let's make the regional integration, the continental integration, and the trade agenda people-focused. Let's carry along our young people, our SMEs, our women, because integration and trade for development is about people. And thirdly, let's learn from the processes and experiences from other parts of the world and take the example that we had in terms of telecoms, where we were able to leapfrog technologies to also leapfrog towards a sustainable development anchored on intra-African trade. So let's create value chains that are sustainable, that are not fossil fueled, but regional value chains that are also make it easy for us to live in the continent because of less pollution, and also make our contribution to the world because we are using renewable energy and technologies that are positive or that are climate friendly. So those are three things that I would urge the policymakers to focus on. And thank you also to Uongozi Initiative for the opportunity for us to talk about trade and regional integration in Africa.